So let me begin by saying that before we talk about atrocities against Dalit women or tribal women, it is important to say many of you here have not read this booklet, and I would urge you to do that. There are many takeaways from it, and the most succinct takeaway that I can say is that it's clear that the job of our rape laws, as they've been crafted thus far, for the most part, in what they omit, in the language in which even, and I'm talking about the text of the law, in terms of, and the text of some of these judgments, and the language, of course, of modesty and chastity and so on, it is really to congeal and to keep fixed a caste-based patriarchy in India. That's its job. It is to protect our women and to reserve our rights to their bodies and to protect them from those others, so that the Varna system doesn't shift. That is essentially the manner in which the rape laws have, the language in 2013 changed, the language has changed in driblets over the years, but if essentially we see that as the big takeaway of this booklet, that is the job that these rape laws have been textually constructed to do, then for me, there is a very significant omission in the booklet. And that is to look at the very idea of the nation and nationalism. Because unless we look at our idea of the woman, the national construct of the woman, we actually will not fully understand what is it that we are trying to protect in terms of the kinds of laws that we have crafted. Now, so I'm not going to go the Bharat Mata deconstruction route. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. It's been done to death. What I'm going to do is something really silly and popular, and just hold up this, which is from a couple of weeks ago. And I would urge everybody to look, because this is the construction of the Indian woman that is sought to be projected and protected through the existing rape laws. And I will describe this for you. So this is our Prime Minister's blessings to Indian women. Saaf Niyat, Sahi Vikas, realizing India's full potential through women-led development. And I wish I actually had I had a screen to show you this. But what it is, the first image is of a heavily pregnant, very happy woman. Right? So that's your job. That is the job. That's why chastity, virginity, all of this stuff comes into, because we are procreative beings essentially. The second woman is looking she's just looking very quietly satisfied, sitting next to a gas cylinder with her hand on it. All right. So this is image number 2, and I'm not making this stuff up, right? This is this month's newspaper big ad. The third woman is, of course, looking so lovely because she's got a baby in her arm and the baby's kissing her. Okay? So the pregnant one has now converted into a full-blown mama. And the fourth image is absolutely delightful. It is an obviously Muslim woman, and she's in a burqa and she's looking really happy. Okay? So these are the 4 images that the current government believes are the Indian. Now these are the Indian women that
are going to lead development.
They are going to lead development, and they are the ones that the IPC seeks to protect. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to wrap our heads around this thought, that it's not everybody. It's this. It's as a mother, as a gas cylinder cooker, so the big complaint in this booklet, a legitimate one, is we are focusing too much on sexual violence, and we cannot undo the kinds of judgments that we just heard unless we create a sex positive society. In other words, where sexuality of everybody is respected, and there is actually a move towards greater and greater sexual rights, because otherwise we're only creating a negative sexual violence criminalization. Now, how am I linking this with this? Sex in India is a dirty thing. Sex in our Shastras meant to be
Procreative.
That's why the law has an extraordinary emphasis on, and continues, by the way, to have an extraordinary emphasis on penovaginal rape. That's why that's the big deal, right? It's only the stuff down there that's important, because that's what gets you pregnant, and that's what you need to preserve. So, poking of breasts, insertion of objects, all of this stuff, anal sex, none of this, because it's really the penis and the vagina meeting, creating babies. So the general understanding somehow in the Indian psyche is that sex has a godly purpose. Sex has a purpose, number one, right? It's not supposed to be for fun. Fun sex is carnal. I mean, this word carnal, it's kind of animalistic, right? It's very beastly, right? I mean, real sex without a purpose. And now you try and link that to the bodies of Dalit women and tribal women in India. So the sex that the upper caste man has with his lawfully wedded wife is really not sex, that's procreation, and that's boring. The animal, carnal stuff is to be had with this other object that is impure. So the Dalit woman body is constructed as polluted, naturally. It's impure, but it's also there for the asking in the caste structure. And that's where you have the carnal stuff. At home, with biwi, with sindoor, you have the boring stuff, kyunki vansh chalana hai. That's broadly how we think of how Hindu Indian society, and this has influenced Muslim society also, which also has its own caste structure, how we think of sex. And until we can liberate ourselves from or deal with this understanding, we will never be able to create a sex positive culture. That is the only way to actually change the way these laws function. Now, there is one category of women that I left out. See, now Dalit women, of course, polluted, impure, bad to touch, but therefore really, really, really sexy, and you really want to grab them. Tribal women, national image construction, half-clad, loose in sexual morals, oversexed anyway, right? That's what Farah, time up. Okay. I should read it out loud. What do I do? I haven't even reached like point 1. Okay. Give me 1 minute more and I'll try and not do anything else. Okay. Damn. Okay. So of course, the tribal woman is half-clad, animal-like, prone to sex, and we saw that famously, and of course in the Mathura case where, but we've seen it in other cases involving tribal women, that their chastity, their modesty is never invoked. They are basically asking for it and they are loose and all that. A very interesting difference comes with the Muslim woman. And that is an image construction that has actually changed over the years. She is no longer the courtesan exerting sexual power in her kotha. She is not Pakiza anymore. She has gradually shifted to becoming what we saw over here. A very, the burqa being, and eye contact being sexual and sexy, Mere Mehboob style, Sadhna style, that's passé. As a construction of popular imagery, that is passé stuff. Now the burqa-clad woman is a relatively desexed creature who is very passive and is oppressed by Islam. That's kind of the popular, Interestingly, in the case of atrocities against the Muslim community, the one that is over-constructed is the Muslim male. And so attacks on Muslim women are actually countering that. The Muslim male is, he's Pathan, or in RSS imagination, he looks like Imran Khan. I don't know. He's circumcised. And RSS people have been known in interviews to journalists to say that Muslim men can give वो तो ज़्यादा सुख देते हैं क्योंकि वो circumcised होते हैं, hence love jihad करते हैं और love jihad में successful होते हैं, right? They can satisfy for women, right? They eat meat, right? So yeah, hot-blooded. So the construction of the Muslim male, and many of us have analyzed this actually post 2002 very vividly, including in a lot of the communal propaganda that was going on, was the danger to India from that completely let loose kind of dangerous sexuality. And to counter that, the community has to be subdued, and that is being done through the Muslim woman. Now, this is actually not the point I was going to make, but this was the first of 7 points. But I will try and conclude by merely saying that it is in the constructions of the Dalit, the tribal, and the Muslim that the absence of spaces for constructing a positive sexuality, because these are these are bodies in a sense under permanent siege, and these are bodies that have become permanent victim bodies, both in how we see it, how we construct it, and how the law sees it as well. And in that frozen space of, and the sense of permanent siege is not merely a dialogic construction, it is actually a political reality. So you have a very difficult job of decongealing these very congealed images of permanent victimhood that rest on particular categories of bodies, namely Dalits, tribals, and increasingly Muslims, although that's a Muslim is a slightly more nuanced discussion, and they don't even get covered under the Prevention of Atrocities Act.